This is a Sheridanlife radio podcast.
Welcome to Slipstream Podcast, a bi-weekly podcast on all things Formula One and Formula One culture. This week, we're talking about Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Okay, so let's talk about how Lewis performed in the 2025 World Championship. So it was a big year for Lewis because he had joined Ferrari in January 2025, which was a big break from his 12-year stint with Mercedes. And with Ferrari, Hamilton scored 156 points. He did not get any podiums or win any Grand Prix races. He won a Chinese Grand Prix sprint, but the sprints do not officially count towards the Grand Prix podiums.
No.
What do you think about Lewis this previous season?
I mean, Lewis he's a staple name in Formula One at this point with his long history of winning. And this year, he kind of flopped a little. I know there are a lot of circumstances about the car and the team when it comes to racing, but this year just wasn't a Lewis Hamilton year. He was behind a lot. He wasn't getting podiums. He was consistently towards the top half of the leaderboard, but even still, it wasn't necessarily a recognizable name for this year of racing.
Personally, I think Lewis looks better in the Mercedes team colors, with the Mercedes
the white and blue or
or
teal.
the black and like the turquoise or teal color. Like he looks so much better in that. Red, he can pull it off, but not as well. And not even just that. It's just I think it's been a disappointing year for Lewis, and I think it really showed in his face or how he would answer questions in the interviews. So during the 2025 season, after a disappointing finish in Sao Paulo, Ferrari chairman John Elkann said, "We have drivers who it is important that they concentrate on driving, that they talk less, that we have more important races ahead of us, and it is not possible to finish second place." Now, during Sao Paulo race, Ferrari got a double DNF, as in did not finish. The drivers were both out of the race, with Lewis Hamilton and his teammate Charles Leclerc being unable to continue because in the opening lap, Hamilton made contact with Carlos Sainz Jr. and clipped the back, and then he clipped the back of Franco Colapinto's car, and then it just damaged his car, and it had to be retired later throughout the race. While as Charles Leclerc, when there was a race restart because there was a safety car out due to yellow flags, he had another collision with somebody else, and then that also led him to being unable to continue the race due to safety reasons. Now, this quote I'm quoting is because John Elkann is basically kind of blaming the drivers in a little bit. He's not really taking accountability or talking about Ferrari as a team, more about the drivers should talk less and just drive more. What do you think about that?
I think the drivers, yes, they can do so much. And obviously it's the driver's talent that gets them there, but it's the car and the team behind them that pushes them forward to be the best that they can be, because they're all in Formula One. We all know that they can drive really well. They've all earned that position in Formula One to be drivers. It's the team that really needs to back them up to give them a good car and a good drive. And that is a lot of the big difference that you see in some of the different teams throughout many years of Formula One history, where the car can be especially what makes the drive. And last episode, we talked about Max Verstappen, and we saw how he's an amazing driver, and yes, his skills got him there. But at the other side, there's a lot that needs to go into the car to be able to perform at its best ability, to be able to push a driver to their fullest extent.
I think Ferrari is if you watch football, it's being compared to a Cowboys fan, and if you what's it called? If you watch hockey, I guess it's the right comparison is being a Leafs fan. It's there's this team with a name and this branding that looks good on paper, but then you actually follow the team, and it's painful being a Ferrari fan, which is also known as tifosi, because there's just a lot of failures and moments that shouldn't have happened. There were times when I remember Charles Leclerc, they put him in the wrong set of tires for this one race, and I believe
that's just dumb.
Yeah, and I heard the difference between the way Ferrari works is like once an engineer makes a call and then to the driver, it's not like okay, just the engineer and driver agreeing on something and something happening. It's just the engineers have to check with the team principal. Team principal has to approve, and the engineer has to know that team principal approved, and then let the driver know. So it's like there's this extra step in
Yeah.
communication, and I think that really bogs them down as well.
Yeah, which at a point feels just so extra that the team principal needs to get involved with all that. Because, yes, they are somewhat the leader of the team, but at the same time, have trust in your employees, have trust in the people you work with to know that they're going to do a good job. Trust your engineers to say, hey, yeah, you do that to the car, you fix that, whatever, you give them the right tires. All those extra steps is just, it takes so much away and it takes so much extra time and effort that you get this loss in communication where mistakes happen.
Well, okay, yeah. Ferrari is just it's more of a mess, but I'll talk about it later. But the importance is that Ferrari in 2024 season, they had Charles Leclerc as the first driver and they had Carlos Sainz as the second driver, it's like Carlos Sainz Jr. Now, for those who don't know, Carlos Sainz Jr. is a very good driver, and for the 2024 season, I personally I think he outperformed Charles Leclerc because he was able to get podiums and he had this like amazing phenomenal finish in
Yeah.
Singapore. And basically because Ferrari let go of Carlos Sainz, who was such a beloved driver because he has a good personality, he is great at driving, and you replace it with the Formula One legend who is Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
And now Carlos Sainz is in Williams, and Williams is known as like the midfielder car, right? Because they're not expected to have
Yeah.
as much funding or the capabilities to produce a greater car than, let's say, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, which are like they put billions, if not millions of dollars in the
Yeah.
car, and then Williams have like a fraction of their budget. Now, what do you think about Carlos Sainz's performance in Williams?
I mean, Carlos Sainz this year, I personally think he did good. Like, we were talking about how the car pushes you to be the best you can. But in this case, Carlos Sainz is a really good driver, and he showed that even though Williams doesn't have necessarily the best funding, the best cars as other big end teams like Mercedes or Ferrari, Carlos performed well for where he was. He drove really good.
Mhm.
He got podium like on a few occasions, which for a Williams team is extraordinary.
Yeah.
He was consistently performing just very well, and it's just he had a really good year, especially compared to Lewis Hamilton, who I'd say Carlos did better than this year. If we yes, points will say something. I'm not exactly sure who has the most points in that regard, but just the fact that I think Carlos was just a better overall racer this year with the car that he had.
I would say a lot of people are comparing Carlos Sainz with Lewis Hamilton because you were looking at the ex teammate, and now he's in Williams, which is like if people don't know, Williams is kind of like a little sibling to Mercedes in
Yeah.
a way that they share engines, but Mercedes had better car, and Williams, like, although they have the same engines, it's like not really the same, and they have a lesser funding, and
Yeah, they
technically
get the hand-me-downs.
yeah, it's like a little brother, right? The little brother of the Mercedes team. And because of the comparison, although Carlos Sainz got fewer points than Hamilton, he got 64 points, but he managed to get 2 third-place podium finishes in 2025. It just raised a lot of flags for Lewis Hamilton because, he is a top-rated driver. He
Yeah.
costs a lot of money. His
Yes.
contract probably costs a lot. And people are wondering, would Carlos been able to put out a lot more in that Ferrari seat compared to Lewis?
I think so. I'm somewhat biased because I'm a big Carlos fan. He is my number one racer. But with the way he was driving this year, I think he definitely deserved to keep that that Ferrari seat. And like the other side is, should Charles Leclerc have gone? That's never going to happen. He's Ferrari's baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, I personally think Sainz kind of deserved to stay in Ferrari because he was performing well, and this year he kind of showed that. Even though he was with Williams, which he wasn't necessarily happy about,
Mhm.
he did the best he could, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the coming year.
I think with Ferrari, there's a history of not being able to produce a world championship winning car, and I think it's partly due to negligence. And a lot of Ferrari fans, they call the Tifosi, they call Ferrari disaster class,
Yeah.
as in like the opposite of master class. And let's go back to F1 history. Let's go back to 2005 world champion Fernando Alonso, two-time world champion. He drove for Ferrari 2010 to 2014, and he said Ferrari gave him cars that required miracles.
Yeah.
And when Sebastian Vettel, a four-time world champion, drove for Ferrari in 2015 to 2020, there were reliability issues with the cars as well as strategic errors that prevented them from winning the world championship. And I believe these issues have continued to the current day with Charles Leclerc facing the same issues as kind of like the same internal issues that he has faced while Sebastian Vettel was in a Ferrari era.
Yeah, the car just isn't capable enough. There's just always some kind of issue that other teams don't have when it comes down to that. Even if you have a good driver, the car still challenges in the car still just throw it off, and it makes it so that the players can't compete at the best of their abilities.
I think the reliability issues and just the wrong strategic cars are really what puts the whole Ferrari situation down. And I think back when Michael Schumacher, the Red Baron, when he was winning a lot of world championships with Ferrari, I think the difference was that back then those teams and those companies didn't necessarily like get the formula of that certain era of that car right, while as Ferrari did. And I know Enzo Ferrari, he or someone like that, I believe he talked about like how good cars only need good engine, while as like I'm paraphrasing here, while as other cars that don't have good engine require like that kind of great aerodynamics and other designs like that. So
yeah, which nowadays are incredibly important to racing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other teams have capitalized upon, especially those big high-end teams which match Ferrari in terms of funding and their equipment. They just outperform them because they're at the same level as Ferrari, but they can put so much more into their cars, like Mercedes and McLaren and Red Bull. They all have very strong cars.
Mm-hmm. I think I used to say this to my friends, and I said that Ferrari is where drivers go to die. And now this is very morbid, but if you really look at it, what I'm trying to say is Fernando Alonso won world championships, but Ferrari, it's like everybody wants to be a Ferrari fan. Like Vettel said, it's like this like prestige, the red color. It's like everyone's dream is like, oh, that branding, like I want to be a part of that. And you go there ultimately good to get your hopes and dreams crushed. And it's just, even when Kimi Räikkönen was with Ferrari, it's just like they haven't been the best team for him either.
Yeah.
And it's just this constant struggle, internal struggle within the team. I think it's just like people have this like, or the engineers or the workers, I'm thinking, they have this like idea of like, oh, we're Team Ferrari, like we're so good. But then that kind of like gets to them.
It's got such a name for itself that
The
it somewhat
history.
boosts an ego. Because they do have history. It's Ferrari. When I think of Ferrari, I think of, damn, that's Ferrari. But yeah, when you can't necessarily live up to that name, like you said before, it requires a miracle.
Yeah, I also think it's just kind of soul crushing because, the part of, if I was a driver, I'd want to be part of Ferrari because, you get up to those Italian races like Monza, Imola, and then you go up there on your podium, you look down and it's a sea of red, and then it's just like Ferrari flags everywhere, and that would evoke a different feeling than anything else, which I can understand that. But it's just like Alonso went to Ferrari to like basically, like he had a world championship winning chances with Ferrari, didn't quite get there. Same thing with Vettel. Like Charles Leclerc, he is known as this like, because he's the first driver for Ferrari, is like in Italian they call him the chosen one, as in the chosen one who, he has the ability to win world championship. Will he ever get there with Ferrari? I don't know.
Ferrari is turning into a team that you go to start your career. It seems like for all the rookies, it'd be great to get to with Ferrari because it boosts your name. You're a Ferrari driver. But when it comes to actually winning, there are other options. You like even looking at Oscar Piastri. He's fairly new in the scene. His name isn't necessarily around as much as some of these big names like Lewis Hamilton. Now,
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton has so much more time racing, but he came third overall this year. He did such a good race
Mhm.
with McLaren, who had a really good car, and he's a good driver. If he was on Ferrari, he'd be the Oscar Piastri of Ferrari.
It would be a different story. I believe like the same thing that is happening to Lewis Hamilton would have been happening to Oscar Piastri.
Hey, it's Amelia, founder of Sheridanlife Radio. If you're listening to this and are wondering how podcasts like this even happen, the answer is students like you. Sheridanlife Radio is a student-run station where you can get involved in podcasting, radio hosting, music programming, production, journalism, and creative leadership. No experience required. If you want real media experience while you're still in school, this is where it starts. Head to Sheridanlife Radio and get involved.
All right, we're going to be talking about some of Lewis Hamilton's history when it comes to him being in Formula One. And he started karting when he was 6. And at the time, throughout his whole karting history, he won many national titles. And this actually attracted the attention of the McLaren Young Driver Program in 1998. And at that time, they signed Hamilton while he was still in karting to try to kind of put his name out there and say, hey, there's this rookie. We kind of want him on our team eventually. And that kind of set his career to be in Formula One through that program. He was like a big sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
And so through the years, in the year 2000, he progressed into Formula 3, where he won many championships. And he was in around that Formula 3 area until 2007. 2007, Hamilton signed with McLaren through that McLaren Young Driver Program and joined their Formula One team for the first time.
Let's go back to how Lewis Hamilton started karting at the age of 8. A lot of people who are in F1, like they come from a family of prestige or family of a lot of money because karting costs a lot, like upwards up to $10,000 above. And this is an American.
Yeah.
So imagine in Canadian dollars. And now, unlike most F1 drivers, because his family wasn't like very wealthy or his dad didn't have like millions of dollars to just like, give his son to, do whatever.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton's dad, Anthony, worked as a IT contractor cleaning and then also took a lot of night shifts and then slept on the couches a lot, according to Lewis Hamilton. And now when Lewis was 10 years old in 1993, he went up to Ron Dennis, a McLaren team principal, CEO, and co-owner at the time. And at the award ceremony, he said, "One day I want to race for you."
Yeah.
And now Ron signed Lewis Hamilton's autograph book by saying, "Phone me in 9 years." And now 3 years later, in 1995, that's when Lewis Hamilton got signed to the McLaren's Young Driver Program. And now this is I believe it's such a heartwarming story because when you think about these posh drivers that but Lewis Hamilton really had to make a name for himself and really, and his dad put everything he had into his son. Like he really backed him up. And I don't know, like if my kid was really into karting and even if I saw something in him, would I be able to work multiple jobs while selling a lot of the stuff I have just to support him?
And Hamilton's story goes even beyond that because he's the first black driver in Formula One history. Even in his karting days, Formula One is a very white sport.
Yeah.
And being a black driver, there's
Very
a lot
European.
of there's a lot of racism against that, a lot of stuff he had to push through.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to make it this far and is amazing. And even now he uses his position to support a lot of Black Lives Matter causes, a lot of LGBTQ causes, which is amazing. And he's really using his position for good because of his own background of that systemic racism.
I think when Hamilton was 10 and when he went up to Ron Dennis and then, said, I want to race for you, I think it kind of shows that even from a young age, he had that mentality of a driver. Like, he knows, okay, one day I want to be here. And normally kids, they're afraid. Like, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's Ron Dennis. Like, that is like the CEO and like, the racing principal for that team I want to race for. Like, would they be able to have the guts? Same thing as Lewis Hamilton. I think that confidence is what proved, or I'm hoping it just evoked that kind of feeling in Ron Dennis thing. Like,
Yeah.
I can kind of trust this kid.
Yeah,
kinda
this is
deal.
a young driver. I see a future with him. Obviously, Hamilton was winning a lot,
Yeah.
and so it pushed him forward for that. But yeah, they saw future ahead of him, some brightness in his eyes.
I think it also helps that, normally I'm assuming other drivers, it's like they meet or they have to go into meetings with these other principals, or before they get to the principal, they have to talk to a lot of different managers, and then it's just like a formal talk. But Lewis Hamilton, like, he just went straight for it, and I think that showed him as a go-getter. But
Yeah.
when Hamilton debuted in F1 in 2007, and just to win his first world championship a year later in 2008, that was, wow, I think it really proved to everyone, like, this Hamilton guy, he has something special, because to win the world championship just a year after your first debut, I think it's an incredible feat.
Yeah. And at the time, he got the record for the youngest driver ever to win a championship, which was then later broken by Max Verstappen a few years later. But at the time, that was a really big achievement for him.
Do you know how old he was when he...
Was he about, I
like,
think
20-something, right?
Yeah, early 20s.
And how old was Max when he...
I think Max was about 19 or 20.
Yeah. So Lewis Hamilton, he got signed to Mercedes in December of 2012 and began racing for them in 2013.
Yeah.
Now, Hamilton left McLaren due to the team's car performance and team politics. And Lewis won 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 World Championships in the Mercedes.
Yeah.
And now from 2013 to 2016, the fan call Hamilton-Rosberg rivalry, the Silver Arrow War. Do you remember the Silver Arrow War?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you remember from it?
I mean, that was this whole time between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton going back and forth, but like rivalry between each other within the 2014 and 15 season, I believe. Nico and Lewis combined won 51 of the 59 Grand Prix that were raced. That leaves 8 Grand Prix where Mercedes as a team did not win.
Yeah.
It was such a time where they were just outperforming everyone else. They were the showstoppers, and it was just the biggest rivalries within all of F1 at that time was between the two members of the same team, which is really funny to think about. But yeah, it's just such a time for Mercedes and for that team.
That's true. Back when Mercedes had the most dominant car, both drivers of the team, they kept going head to head, and I think they were allowed to go head to head because they both had like the top performing best cars.
Yeah.
And when Nico finally won, the rivalry and won the world championship in 2016, he just retired.
Yeah, he said, I got it.
Wow.
I'm out. And to be fair, the past 2 years before that, Hamilton did win. So it was kind of Nico's time to step back and say, hey, I got it. I'm done here. He left. And then Hamilton moved on to win for the next 4 years in a row, maintaining that Mercedes win.
I remember when Mercedes engineering, it was so top quality that I forgot what year, but they had this one thing, like when the drivers pulled the steering wheel towards them, they activated the system that would automatically kind of turn the wheels a certain way so they would get better grip or better exits coming out of the corners. And a lot of the teams that were examining Mercedes, and they noticed, Valtteri Bottas and Hamilton like kind of pushing the wheel the steering wheel inwards, and they were wondering, what is that? What does that do?
And it's innovation. That's what you need in Formula One. That's what Ferrari isn't doing.
It was the engineering of that particular car was so good that the FIA banned it.
Oh, wow.
They banned that system, they banned that car because it was just too dominant.
Which, as an engineer, I'd love that. I want the FIA to see me and be like,
I think when I think
you did too good of a job.
Peak dominance of like the peak highlights of Hamilton's racing career is when he had this racing engineer Bono, and then they would say Lewis is Hamil time. I almost said Hamil time. Hammer time. Do
It's
you
his Hamil
remember what
time.
hammer time is?
I don't.
Okay, so back when, like Lewis would pit or whatever, and then, or like other cars are pitting, Bono would say, hey, this is the time to go as fast as you can, like floor it, like absolutely try to get the fastest time, fastest lap. Like this is when you want to push your car. Bono would say it's hammer time. And it was such like a good catchphrase. It's like every time he said hammer time, like you knew Lewis Hamilton was just gonna go flying through that track like it was nothing.
Yeah.
I also think it was that was okay. Because I remember when Hamilton went into Ferrari, he was like asking a bunch of people on stage, because they have these like events, and they were like, what should the because his Italian engineer, like he's not gonna say Hamil time hammer time, so he's like, okay, what are some alternatives to hammer time? But I don't think it has to come naturally and organic and be like this like catchphrase, and like
you can't make it up. It just has to happen, and then he puts the pedals to the metal and he drives.
I don't think he has had the opportunity to put in his hammer time in Ferrari as much.
No. Definitely not. It's just not reliable enough. There's nothing there, and it doesn't have that team spirit. He needs that.
Like the team is clashing against itself in a bit. Yeah,
especially when they go against Lewis Hamilton being this veteran driver versus Charles Leclerc, who is also a veteran driver, but who they're kind of Ferrari's kind of putting as their number one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily feel like a team. It feels like two positions that they're prioritizing one over the other, especially because Charles Leclerc, especially this past year, he outperformed Lewis Hamilton by quite a bit. Like Ferrari this past season ended up in 4th overall. Charles got like about 2/3 of those points, which is like, no wonder they're going to put their money into Charles Leclerc, but it leaves Hamilton being
kind of looked down upon too.
Yeah, exactly, which is kind of crazy to think of, going back from Hamilton's Mercedes era to now here in Ferrari, where it's just dust clouds.
The steep. Yeah. I think, what happened to Alonso is like, he went to Ferrari, and then after Ferrari, like he, bounced back from a lot of different teams, but he's no longer in a championship winning car. And I think the same thing is kind of like, I see the same trajectory happening with Hamilton, but I know the big thing about him wanting to be in Mercedes is that the Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff kept telling, we're gonna give you that 8th world championship winning car. We're gonna make you that championship winning car. And I think Lewis just got too impatient, and he just wanted to spend his best years left racing with a team that represented so much to him.
It feels very reminiscent of Daniel Ricciardo, who he was performing very well, and it just got to the point where he kind of dropped off. He changed teams. It slowly went downhill.
That's a whole can of worms.
Yeah, it is, and we won't get into it now. But it's just that slow fall off while you're trying to stay in the game, but it's kind of just slowly fading away. And it gets to the point where, when will Hamilton say, I've had enough? He's incredibly rich. He's got his own fashion lines. He has a whole watch line. Like, he can be very successful and be making a ton of money without Formula One. So when does it get to a point where he says, I'm stepping back. I've had enough. I don't want to be ridiculed like this anymore. He has a chance, but I feel like if things don't change, he's coming on the last few years.
Okay, yeah. I think like there was a difference between racers, like back when racers had that competitive edge, and then like at a certain point when the racers aged, they were like, okay, I'm just gonna do this for fun now. Like the same thing kind of happened with Vettel, same thing kind of happened with Alonso. It's more about, just being in the sport for the sake of being in the sport. And for Hamilton, unfortunately, I think he won't get his 8th championship.
I don't think so. It will genuinely take a Ferrari miracle where they need to pull out all the stops for next year. But it's not just even about the car at this point. It's about the team, and they need to really change some things around.
Even then, he's a second driver. He's
exactly.
Not even the first driver.
In which case, that would just go to Charles probably. So it's like, where are Hamilton's priorities at this point? Is he going to keep racing because he wants to race?
Yeah.
Is he going to maybe try to join another team? But Ferrari's already put so much money into him for basically nothing. And so it's like, who would want that?
Because he's also a very pricey
Yes.
driver.
And we've seen there are a bunch of new rookies who have talent and who if you put in that effort, they can potentially turn into that next Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. Lewis is I mean, back then it's like, oh my god, it's Lewis Hamilton. Like, people would talk about him the same way, you know, people would talk about Max. But I think back in 2021, where he had that 8th world championship winning battle against Max Verstappen, because they were tied to the exact point, and the race came down to Abu Dhabi, where, you know, winner takes all, like, it really mattered. And then Mercedes made the wrong strategic decision, and I believe Red Bull made the correct strategic decision.
Yeah.
Because Mercedes chose to keep Hamilton out. He needed a new set of tires. His rubber was going out. But, you know, Max and his newer tires obviously had the better grip, better traction, and the better calls to beat Hamilton. And I think that was Hamilton's chance.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
And that was the turning point in terms of just that F1 history, where Max Verstappen kind of became that staple name.
And now it's his dominance era. Yeah.
Exactly, which is great. That's how the history goes. But it's the time when looking at Lewis Hamilton, where does it go from here?
I think it's good to celebrate Lewis Hamilton's era, but I don't think...
If he goes any longer, it'll just be a detriment to his name. I want to still think of Hamilton and he was a great driver with Mercedes, and not think he was all right with Ferrari. Like, he kind of went downhill. I don't want to think of him as a sob story. I want to think him as a
this great
he's
guy.
Lewis Hamilton.
But I do appreciate what he has done for the racing community in terms of broadening out, like, it means a lot for someone of color to be in that position of 7-time world champion, while as the only other person who has done that is Michael Schumacher.
Yeah.
And imagine if, you know, you're the only representation in such a sport, an F1, like a prestigious sport, where there's no one before you who has done what you have done.
Yeah.
And I think that alone is enough.
Yeah. And Hamilton has since started his own somewhat of a charity. It's called the Hamilton Commission. And it works to dismantle systemic barriers in racing and in STEM in general, which is really good to see. Through all that hardship, he's come back. He's like, now he's pushing for what he believes in, his own goals, his own, just getting everyone involved in racing, which is great.
That is the end of Hamilton's era, and we would like to add more. And obviously, we would like to talk about more highlights of Hamilton, but as of currently, it's kind of difficult to.
Yeah.
So this episode was a bit more bleak, but it's a lot more realistic in terms of examining Hamilton.
Yeah. But now, as of the 2025 season, Hamilton has won 7 championships. He has 105 wins, 202 podiums, 69 fastest laps, at a total of 5,018 points. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Slipstream Podcast about Lewis Hamilton.
Thank you so much.
Meow.